Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, we are going to take a look at the two lenses for your Sony A7C or any Sony full frame camera. This is the Sony 20mm f1.8 and this is the Tamron 17 to 28 f2.8. These both are very good lenses if you are looking for that ultra wide angle. The 20mm is my favorite. So in this video, let's take a look at both of these lenses and see where each one fits and what's my personal preference when it comes to one of this lens. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, quickly looking at the outside build quality, this feels a little plasticky, but holding both lenses in my hand, I feel like the Sony 20mm is slightly heavier than this, but on paper it's not the case because this is 383 gram and this is 420 grams. So size wise, as you can see here, it's slightly bigger than the Sony 20mm. So from a width wise, it's kind of the same width as the Sony 20mm. If I put both side by side, both has the same 67mm thread and it has the same look and feel. But the 20mm has got this extra button here which you can customize. Especially if you're using a Sony A7C, you don't have much buttons to customize it. So any additional button I would take. So that's one advantage. On the Sony, you got this physical ring here to control the aperture. That's handy to have because again on Sony A7C, you can customize this dial to do something else if you got that extra ring to control the aperture. So I would take that at any point, because the more controls on the lens, more customizable it is. Apart from that, the major difference is this is f2.8. So if you're looking for that low light, then f1.8 would be much better option. But otherwise, it's almost the same. With the Tamron, you get the additional 3mm on the wide end and the additional 8mm on the extended end. So if you're looking for that extra reach, then ideally you can go for the Tamron. Price wise, it's almost same price, but the Sony price has come down $100 less in these days. So when you're going for the Tamron versus Sony, I would say it's your personal preference. Both will get the job equally done. Both lenses are very identical and the minimum focusing distance for Tamron is 19 cm and the minimum focusing distance for Sony is 18 cm. On the Sony, you got this autofocus and manual focus button. And on the Tamron, you don't have any buttons to control that. So if you want that quick buttons to control your settings, then go with the Sony. With Tamron, you have to control everything with the camera body. If you have A7C, then it might be a challenge because you don't have much buttons available on the A7C. But if you have any other Sony full frame camera, then it should not be an issue. Alright, we'll do a quick autofocus test outside, but otherwise right now I'm shooting with the Sony A7S III rented body with a Sigma 24mm adapted to Sony body using the Sigma MC11 adapter. I'm finding that the autofocus is doing pretty good job with the A7S III and the MC11 combination. It's focusing on my face, no complaints here. I think sometimes when I have the mic in front of me, it always have some issues focusing on my face. The focus goes back onto the mic. In this case, I think A7S III is doing a great job. I'm going to switch to the Sony A7C and you can see that the focusing will struggle a bit when you have something in front of the camera. So let's switch that and we will attach these two lenses onto the Sony A7C and see how that looks. Alright guys, so now I have put on the Tamron 17 to 28 f2.8 onto the Sony A7C body. So I'm not using the A7S III. And right now I can see I have the white box on my eyes. So it's eye autofocus. It's not focusing on this, which is a good thing. So this is how it looks like with the daylight. I'm sitting in front of a window and it's a natural light coming out. So you can see that window back there. So it's the same type of light coming through the window right behind this camera. So this is how it looks like with the Tamron 17 to 28 f2.8. I'm shooting at 24 frames per second, f/150th of a shutter, f2.8 ISO auto. I should have probably made it ISO maybe something different. So let me try to do that. So now I'm using the Cine 4 picture profile and ISO 400. So this is how it looks like. I'm going to put the Sony 20mm f1.8, and probably I may have to bring down the ISO a bit because 2.8 versus 1.8. But let's see. So let me swap. Alright, now I have put the Sony 20mm f1.8 onto the Sony A7C body. All the settings remain the same as how I had it for Tamron, except that I put the ISO from 400 back down to 200 because the Sony is a f1.8 lens, so it's letting in more light. So that's the only difference, and this is how it looks like for the Sony 20mm f1.8. Should give you a quick comparison of how both looks like from a wide perspective, bokeh perspective, and all that. So I hope it helped. And now we will do a quick autofocus test outdoor and see how that looks like. All right, quick autofocus test, and it's ISO 400. It's snowing, so let's see one more time. Eye autofocus, is it focus? Out of frame, maybe. Come back. This is the Tamron. Okay, now test the Sony 20mm. Sony 20mm autofocus. Let me go out of the frame, come back. I think it's getting it. Yep. Is it focused? Let's see. Alright guys, in my personal opinion, it just comes down to the personal preference. If you want to have that wide and zoom ability, or if you want to have a prime lens such as the 20mm with a constant aperture of f1.8, which would be good for low light situation. Even for the Tamron, it's constant aperture at 2.8, but sometimes when it is dark and inside conditions, I think I prefer the 1.8 better. But if you are outdoors, then probably 1.8 and 2.8 shouldn't matter that much, because most of the time you might be putting ND filter to bring the light down if you're shooting in 24 frames per second for videos. Anyway, so my conclusion is, I think it's a very difficult choice. If I have an option to travel with something, then I may look at Tamron, because I know I have the option to get that little bit of zoom ability up to 28, and maybe I can put in APS-C format and get up to 35, close to that. So it comes down to that personal preference of how you want to use this lens. In most cases, if you're doing a vlogging kind of setup, then probably 20mm is good enough, because you're not gonna zoom in and out when you're facing the camera. You just want to keep it to your face, and 20mm is wide enough to do that. So if your primary purpose is the vlogging kind of setup, then go with the 20mm. But if you are kind of a photo plus vlogging and some storytelling, you may want to zoom in and out and things like that, then Tamron would be a better option. But either way, Tamron shouldn't be compared to the 20mm, because this is more in the range of that G Master 16 to 35 f2.8, and when you compare against that lens, this is must have, because this one is almost half the price or below half the price compared to the Sony G Master 16 to 35. Ideally, the Tamron should be compared against that because the zoom range is similar to that and not against the 20mm. But if you are deciding between 20mm and that zoom range, and if you have a 24 to 70 lens, then I think I would go with this. So, you get anything covered from 17 all the way to 70. So that's all I wanted to share in today's video. I hope you liked it, and if you did, give it a like. If you're new here, consider subscribing for more videos, and I will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.